Hmm. I have to check this. Let me check it later. So, okay. Why my screen doing that? Why are you doing that? Hold on. Okay. It's still doing that. Anyway, I know it's been a minute, so but let's get back to it. Now, this for all my extreme spiritual people like me. People who want to go deep, who want to know more about the unknown, the unseen. Not just the surface stuff. So we're gonna get into signs of psychic attack. The mind side of nature, the unseen, not necessarily evil, causes of the rendering of the veil, signs of psychic attack, fear and oppression, nightmares, hypnagogic visions between sleeping and waking, nervous exhaustion, wasting and loss of strength, changes of temperament, projection of thought forms, materializations, hauntings, vampirisms, repercussion, evil odors, precipitation of slime, phantom footprints, the astral veil, poltergeist phenomena, outbreaks of fire, necessary to consider. A. Possibility of a natural explanation. B. Deliberate fraud. An open mind essential. Keep an open mind. Meaning that everything doesn't have to be psychic. Sometimes stuff just catch on fire. It don't have to mean anything. If we look at the universe around us, we cannot fail to realize that there must be some overruling plan coordinating its infinite complexity. If we take into our hands and examine mentally any living thing, however simple, equally we must realize that the order of its parts is built up on a determining framework. Science has sought in vain for this organizing principle. It will never find it on the physical plane, for it is not physical. It is not the inherent nature of atoms which causes them to arrange themselves in the complex patterns of living tissues. The driving forces of the universe, the framework upon which it is built up in all its parts, belong to another phase of manifestation than our physical plane, having other dimensions than the three to which we are habituated, and perceived by other modes of consciousness than those to which we are accustomed. We live in the midst of invisible forces, whose effects alone we perceive. We move among invisible forms, whose actions are very often we do not perceive at all, though we may be profoundly affected by them. Instruments of precision. In this mind side of nature, invisible to our senses, intangible to our instruments of precision, many things can happen that are not without their echo on the physical plane. There are beings that live in this invisible world as fish live in the sea. There are men and women with trained minds or special aptitudes who can enter into this invisible world as a driver descends to the ocean bed. I'm sorry about that. Who can enter into this invisible world as a diver descends to the ocean bed. There are also times when, as happens to a land when the sea dikes break, the invisible forces flow in upon us and swamp our lives. Normally, this does not occur. We are protected by our very incapacity to perceive these invisible forces. There are four conditions, however, in which the veil may be rent and we may meet the unseen. We may find ourselves in a place where these forces are concentrated. We may meet people who are handling these forces. We may ourselves go out to meet the unseen, led by our interest in it, and get out of our depth before we know where we are. Or we may fall victim to certain pathological conditions which rend the veil. The threshold of the unseen is a treacherous coast on which to bathe. There are potholes and currents and quicksands. The strong swimmer who knows the coast may venture in comparative safety. The non-swimmer who takes counsel of nothing but his own impulses may pay for his temerity with his life. But we must not make the mistake of thinking that these invisible forces are necessarily evil and inimical to humanity. They are no more inimical in themselves than are water or fire, but they are potent. If we run counter to them, the result is disastrous for us, for we have broken a natural law. But they are not out to attack us any more than we are out to attack them. We must face the fact, however, that men and women with knowledge of these things have, both in the past and in the present, used that knowledge unscrupulously, and that we may find ourselves involved in the results of their actions. It may safely be said that the unseen is only evil and inimical to humanity when it has been corrupted and perverted by the activities of these unscrupulous men and women, whom initiates call adepts of the left hand path. That's another topic, though, the left hand path. So just take that with a little light. We must consider the outward and visible signs of psychic attack before we are in a position to analyze the nature of such attacks and indicate their source of origin. It is a fundamental rule that diagnosis must precede treatment. There are many different kinds of psychic attacks, and the methods that will dispose of one will be ineffectual against another. The commonest form of psychic attack is that which proceeds from the ignorant and malign mind of our fellow human beings. We say ignorant as well as malignant, for all attacks are not deliberately motivated. The injury may be as accidental as that inflicted by a skidding car. This must always be borne in mind, and we must not impute malice or wickedness as a matter of course when we feel we are being victimized. Our persecutor may himself be a victim. We should not accuse a man of malice if we have not linked hands with him and he has stepped on a live rail. Nevertheless, we should receive at his hands a severe shock. So it may be with so it may be with many an occult attack. The person from whom it emanates may not have originated it. Therefore, we should never respond to attack by attack, thus bringing ourselves down to the moral level of our attackers, but rely upon more humane methods, which are in reality equally effectual and far less dangerous to handle. People also come in touch with the unseen through the influence of places. Someone who is not actually psychic, but who is sufficiently sensitive to perceive the invisible forces subconsciously may go to a place where they are concentrated at a high tension. Normally, although we move in the midst of these forces, for they sustain our universe. We are oblivious of them. When they are concentrated, however, unless we are very dense minded, we begin to be dimly conscious of something that is affecting us and stirring our subliminal self. It may happen that the barrier between consciousness and subconsciousness is dense in some people, and they are never able clearly to realize what is going on. They merely have the sense of oppression and general malaise, which lifts when they go away to another place. Consequently, their condition may never be detected and lead to years of ill health and misery. More commonly, however, if there is a definite psychic attack of sufficient force to make itself noticeable at all, there will soon begin to appear characteristic dreams. These may include a sense of weight upon the chest, as if someone were kneeling on the sleeper. If the sense of weight is present, it is certain that the attack emanates locally, for the weight is due to the concentration of etheric substance or ectoplasm and is sufficiently tangible to press down the scale of a balance when it is possible to capture it for measurement. A great deal of research has been done with materializing mediums upon the nature of this tangible, subtle substance. And the reader is referred to the books on the experiments conducted by Crawford with the Golightly Circle at Belfast and in Paris with Eva C. by other experimenters. For further information and evidence on this subject, it may be noted that Crawford eventually committed suicide for no known reason. No known reason. A sense of fear and oppression is very characteristic of a cult attack, and one of the surest signs that herald it. It is extremely rare for an attack to make itself manifest out of the blue, as it were. We are not in a normal state of mind, body, and circumstance, and then find ourselves suddenly in the midst of the invisible battle. An approaching occult influence casts its shadow on consciousness before it makes itself apparent to the non-psychic. The reason for this is that we perceive subconsciously before we realize consciously, and a line of creeping shade indicates the penetration of the subconscious sensor from below upwards. As the attack progresses, nervous exhaustion becomes increasingly marked, and there may, under certain conditions, which we will consider later, be such wasting of the tissues that the victim is reduced to a mere bloodless shell of skin and bones, lying on the bed, too weak to move, and yet no definite disease can be demonstrated. Such a case is an extreme example, proceeding unchecked to its logical conclusion. Other issues are possible. However, the resistance may be good, in which case the attack is unable to gain a foothold on the physical plane and is limited to that borderland between matter and mind, which we perceive upon the threshold of sleep. This is a very terrible experience, for the victim is afraid to sleep and cannot keep awake indefinitely. Worn out by fear and lack of sleep, mental breakdown soon supervenes. Nervous exhaustion and mental breakdown are the common results of astral attack among white people. For in Europe, I ain't write this book. Dion wrote this book. Y'all, let's look. Let me finish. Nervous exhaustion and mental breakdown are the common results of astral attack among white people. For in Europe, at any rate, it is not often that an attacker is able to bring the attack to a conclusion in the death of the victim. There are, however, records of cases where the victim has died of pure fright. Kipling's terrible story, The End of the Passage, gives an account of such an occurrence. But in addition to the purely subjective phenomena, there will also be objective ones if the attack has any degree of concentration. The phenomenon of repercussion is well known. The phenomenon wherein that which befalls the subtle body is reflected in the dense body. So that after an astral skirmish during sleep, bruises are found on the physical body. Sometimes bruises of a definite pattern. I have seen the print of a goat's hoof on in the ace of clubs marked upon the skin, as well as defined bruises, passing from blue to yellow and dying away in the course of a few days as bruises will. Evil odors are another manifestation of an astral attack. The characteristic smell is of decomposing flesh, and it comes and goes capriciously. But while it's manifesting, there is no doubt whatever about it, and anyone who is present can smell it, whether they are psychic or not. I have also known a frightful stench of drains arise when a ritual belonging to the element of earth was being incorrectly performed. Another curious phenomenon is the precipitation of slime. I have not actually seen this myself, but I have first-hand information upon good authority of one such case. The marks are sometimes as if an army of slugs had been marching in ordered formation. Sometimes there is a broad smear of slime, and at others, distinct footprints, often a gigantic size. In the case to which I refer, of which I heard from an eyewitness, the marks were like the footprints of an elephant. Enormous tracks on the floor of the drawing room of a bungalow situated near the sea. Odd footprints appearing from nowhere and leading nowhere. And sometimes I observe when there is snow about. I have seen them on two occasions on the roof of an outbuilding. They alighted upon the edge of it as if the walker had stepped off an aeroplane, went straight across, went straight across, and ended abruptly at the wall of the main building upon which to lean abuts. They did not return. A single line of footprints came from nowhere and ended in a lofty wall. A similar happening took place on a very extensive scale in Devon some 50 years ago, and an account of it is to be found in that very curious book, Oddities by Commander Gold. In this case, however, the prints were not human, but were those of what was apparently the hoof of a donkey, proceeding in a single line and going straight through walls and over roofs and covering the best part of a couple hundred miles in a single night on both sides of an unbridged estuary. Those who want confirmatory evidence would do well to consult Commander Gold's book, where the incident is given in detail. There is a curious phenomenon known to occultists as the astral veil. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle makes use of it in one of his Sherlock Holmes stories. This sound varies note, from a clear bell-like note to a faint click. I have often heard it resemble the sound made by striking a cracked wine glass with a knife blade. It commonly announces the advent of an entity that is barely able to manifest and need not necessarily be a herald of evil at all. It may simply be a knock on the door of the physical world to attract the attention of the inhabitants to the presence of one who stands without and who would speak with them. If, however, it occurs in the presence of other symptoms of an actual attack, it will give strong evidence and confirmation of the diagnosis. Inexplicable outbreaks of fire are also sometimes seen in this connection. These indicate that elemental forces, not human, are at work. Poltergeist phenomena also occur in which objects are flung about, bells rung, and other noisy manifestations take place. Of course, there may be multiplicity of phenomena, more than one type occurring in the same case. Needless to say, possibility of some natural material explanation must never be ignored, even in even in cases where the supernatural element appears most obvious. It should always be diligently sought in every possible direction before any supernormal hypothesis is considered worthy of attention. But on the other hand, we should not be so wedded to materialistic theories that we refuse to take a psychic theory as a working hypothesis if it shows any possibility of being fruitful. After all, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, and if working on an occult hypothesis, we are able to clear up a case which has resisted all other methods of handling. We have pretty good evidence in support of our contention. So try to see if it's something else before you assume that it's a psychic attack. Go and see all the possible practical things first before you assume it's a psychic attack. We must also bear in mind that the element of deliberate fraud may enter into the most unexpected places. I have seen a drug addict successfully pass himself off for a considerable length of time as the victim of an occult attack. A recent writer in the British Medical Journal declared that whenever he came across a case of bell ringing knocks, the dripping of water and oil from ceilings, and other untoward happenings, he always looked for the hysterical maidservant. Occultists will be very well advised to do likewise before they begin to worry about the devil. But on the other hand, the wise man, whether occultist or scientist, will not insist upon the hysterical maidservant unless he has caught her red handed, as he surely will do sooner or later if she is the guilty party. Forged banknotes would never gain currency unless there were such a thing as genuine banknotes. It would never occur to someone to produce fraudulent, fake psychic phenomena unless there had been some genuine psychic phenomena to act as a pattern for the forgery. You know how we say it, the fuckery. The acceptance of an explanation should never rest upon the weight of evidence in its favor, not upon one's dislike of its alternatives. I plead that the possibility of a non material explanation should be investigated in cases where the materialistic hypothesis does not reveal results. does not yield results. I said revealed. Not in diseases of the brain and nervous system, nor of the ductless glands, nor in repression of the natural instincts, shall we find the explanation in all cases wherein the mind is afflicted. There is more to man than mind and body. We should never find the clue to the riddle of life until we realize that man is a spiritual being and that mind and body are the garments of his manifestation.